picking it up.
No, let's unplug it and plug it back in again.
Oh, there we go. Aha, sound. There we go. Hi, Rachel. Don't worry, you're not late. I'm late. Because the microphone wasn't working. Oh, dear. Hopefully it's all working now. Oh, dear. What a wonderful start after last week's internet issues, which I think we've got solved for this week, because this week I am directly plugged into the internet with Ethernet via mains, so hopefully that won't cut out. But this week the microphone didn't work. Never mind. Sounds like everything should be working again. I'm so sorry for that, everyone. Is something else not working?
Focus.
Oh. Oh dear. We've been so professional for like the first 3 live streams, and then we got too comfortable, I think. And when I say we, it's me and Matthew Ames, who is one of the moderators in the chat. He's my husband, he's the tech support. And the other moderator in the chat is Rachel from the YouTube channel La Bricalouse, so thank you. And thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for bearing with me last week through the technical issues, and thank you for waiting for the microphone to be fixed this time round. Hopefully you're all still there. I see we've got a few people already chatting away in the chat. That's really lovely to see. What's wrong?
Oh, a little bit of fluff.
Oh, have I got fluff on me now as well? Oh dear. Ah, right. Well, I think we're all here. And maybe I'm a bit too caffeinated because I'm struggling to concentrate, but I shall start again. Hello, welcome everybody to yet another Millinery Studio live stream. My name is Ilona, I'm a milliner based in London, and today I will be making this rose. You might remember it from the last stream, and you might also remember it from the from some of my Instagram posts. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at @byilonamillinery. And this rose is made using flower tools. In the last stream, we went over what the different flower tools are for. Are they interchangeable? How to use them, the safety involved, all the other kind of equipment that you need. And now I thought this week, we'll actually go through making the rose, and I'm going to do it live. I've got a few bits pre-prepared, but I'm going to do every step, hopefully. I've even written myself out a list of order of operations to follow, so hopefully I don't get too sidetracked. But how is everybody today? How are you all doing? Is anyone going to be following along live, or are you guys all just watching me? I don't know what to do with this now. I don't want to keep it on my desk to get it mucky, but I feel like I need to have it on hand to show to people. I guess we'll just jump straight on in. Oh, my throat's a bit dry today again. Right. Now that the sound is working and all the audio is hopefully working, hopefully the music's not too loud, not too quiet, hopefully the microphone is not too loud, not too quiet. The lighting is hopefully all good. Right, shall we jump in? So the rose, let me switch camera views. There we go. And I'll show you the rose just a little bit more close up. And let's talk about what is actually part of this rose. So it has so this is like a whole, I don't know what to call it. I don't really want to call it a corsage because that sounds a little oldie worldy to me, but I would call this a spray, maybe a rose spray, a stem, but it's got a rosebud, and then it's got these 3 velvet leaves, and it has the actual rose. If I dissect this a little bit more, you'll notice I call this a 5-element spray. And 5 is a very magic number. It's from the Fibonacci sequence, my favorite ever number sequence. We should all have a favorite number sequence. Mine is the Fibonacci sequence. You'll find that number pattern throughout all of nature. So I just always think if we're making organic things, if I'm making an organic looking thing for a hat and I'm not sure how many of each element or how many or where to position it or something, if I follow the Fibonacci sequence, it'll turn out looking pretty good. So we've got the Fibonacci sequence goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. So all the elements here fit into the Fibonacci sequence. So I have 1 rosebud, and I have 1 flower bloom, and I have 3 leaves. Similarly, you could say I have 2 rose elements and 3 foliage elements. You see? So it all comes together in this harmonious way. And then on the inside, the rose itself is made out of 10 sets of 5 petals, and I'll show you the pattern for the actual rose later on, but we've got to start with the inside bit, which is these stamens, and also we need to start with the rosebud itself, just because this is the easiest bit and it also takes a while to dry. So we are going to start by making, I've already put it somewhere. Oh dear, I've lost the actual rosebud that I had made somewhere. Never mind. Essentially, what this is it's a bit of cotton wool, which is this stuff, wrapped around a folded bit of wire. So I'll demonstrate that to you first, and then we'll move on to stamens and variety of stamens and how to make them. So, there you go. You can see that a little bit on the screen there. So for making the inside of the bud before it gets covered in the fabric, I've got my strips of cotton wool, and this cotton wool is the one that comes like in a kind of folded pattern. And speaking of which, I am expecting some cotton wool to arrive by the postman today, so I'm very sorry if we get disturbed by the doorbell, but I thought it would have arrived earlier. Right, so let's start with that. The other thing I need apart from the cotton wool is PVA glue. This is standard craft glue, PVA glue, school glue. It's the polyvinyl acetate type of glue. So it's plastic based or polymer based or something. I don't know. I still need to learn more about the chemistry of that. And then I'll need a paintbrush. I'll just choose, actually I'm going to choose the medium paintbrush for this. Keep the other ones clean. The other thing I'll need for the rosebud is a bit of cotton covered wire or you know, silk covered wire, but a wire that is covered in something. If it's a floristry wire that's covered in paper, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to maneuver, so a fabric covered wire is better. And this particular one is 0.4 millimeters thick, so it's nice and light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my glue. And then I'm going to get a little bit of the cotton wool, and this is where you get to decide how big or how small you want your rosebud to be. So I've just popped some glue on the end of my paintbrush, and I'm going to trap some of this cotton wool in the fold of my wire. And I mean, the length of the wire is about 2 times the distance between my thumb and little finger. So it's about that big. So I've trapped that inside, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue along the wire. In fact, that's a bit too much little glue. There's got to be a bit more glue there. There it goes. Oh. This can get a little bit messy, but that's okay. I'm gonna have to get up and wash my hands after I do this bit because this gets very sticky. Just fold that over, like that, and fold it over again and rotate the stem. There it goes. And now I've got glue all over my fingers and everything's going to stick to me, but that's okay. I'm just going to roll up the entire bud. And what you're aiming for is to have a flat edge over here and a pointy tip over here. I'm still trying to think where I made a spare cotton bud. Oh, I know what my cotton bud is. I'll show you in a second. I'll finish this one and then I'll show you one I made earlier in true Blue Peter style. If anyone's watching from the UK, you guys know what Blue Peter is. Do you guys have Blue Peter in America? The Americans listening? If I say Blue Peter, do you know what program I'm talking about on television? It was a craft show. Well, kind of, not really crafts, but like, it's a children's entertainment show that was popular here in the UK. I don't know if it's still going on. It went on for ages, but I think it's recently not been going on. Okay. Concentrate on the rosebud. Right, to get the rosebud, I'm going to try and get a flat edge on the bottom, so I'm just going to push that very much. So just to explain what I've done there, the stem was straight and you would just bend it one way, so you get this bend, and that makes it easier to rotate it. And what the rotation does is it creates a kind of it creates some matting, like a matted fur at the bottom here, and that makes the edge flat, the bottom edge flat. And if you just hold your fingers there and go upwards, it will turn it to a pointy tip. Now this tip is a bit too pointy for my liking. You don't want it too pointy. The other thing sometimes you can do is roll it between your fingers and then apply more pressure to the pointy end. So hopefully you can see that. And then less pressure to the edge. And that gets a little, that looks a bit like a rosebud, doesn't it? I don't like the point though, so I'm just going to get some scissors and chop that point off. I don't want it to be that pointy. But when I cut the end off, I'm going to angle my scissors at an angle. Ooh. It'd help if they were sharper. There we go. And then there's still a tiny point there, so I will cut that off. This will all get covered in 2 layers of fabric later, so it doesn't really matter, but it's nice to be quite accurate with the shape. There we go. It's not as flat as I would like it at the bottom, and it is quite long and thin, but I think it's about the same size as this one. Yeah, that'll do. Let me show you the rosebud that I made earlier, which is just over here. It's a slightly different shape, but it's very difficult to get these shapes identical every time. So this is the one I made earlier, and this is the one I've just made now with a spot of glue. And you see they're slightly different, but I mean, no, okay, they're very different, but never mind. But they'll both do, so this is dry. And when it comes to drying things like this on the wire, it's very handy to bend the end of the wires, and imagine this is a piece of string. In fact, change camera views. So to dry this, imagine this is like a ledge or a piece of string, or my finger is just like a string of fairy lights or something. I can just do that like this, and it will just sit here and dry. PVA doesn't take too long to dry, so there we go. Right, that's the rosebud, element number 1. Nice and easy, hopefully. Hopefully it looked easy. Oops, oh dear, now I've got glue everywhere. What I didn't do was prep some paper towels for clearing messy glue up. So husband, if you could come and get me a bit of paper towel from the bathroom, that would be great. It's going to, now I have a handy ledge above me that you guys can't see. It's just my second camera view wire, so I'm just going to hang these 2 up to dry above my head. Thank you, darling. Right, husband to the rescue, as usual in all the live streams. You see, I did worry about getting the velvet hat dirty. Luckily, the glue didn't go all over that. Right, so that the glue doesn't dry up on the paintbrush, I'm going to straight away just dip it into some water and just leave it there for a bit, because I'll need the paintbrush later. Right, so we've got the rosebud is prepped, waiting to dry and get covered in fabric. The next element is the stamens. This is one of the more complicated elements, but the good news is that if you're lazy or time poor, you can go and buy stamens ready-made. So this is what shop-bought stamens look like. And then this is a selection of handmade stamens here. Can you guys see the difference? So the handmade ones just kind of look a little more organic. These are two different styles of handmade stamens. The plus of making your own stamens is that you can kind of shape them however you want. So you can make them have a pointy edge or like a rounded edge like over here. On these ones I tried to make them a pointy edge, but I couldn't quite manage it. Let's see, can I zoom in so you guys can see a bit more? Hopefully that's all in focus. Right. So over here I tried to make the ends pointy. I think it worked on one, but then it didn't work on all the others. They kind of look a bit like, a little bit like seeds, these ones. Whereas these ones, which I didn't make, this came with another flower making set that I had. These are made by someone and they are very lovely. This is the goal. This is the goal when making stamens, and I clearly have not quite reached it yet. But you know, we're all still learning. And then these are the shop bought ones. So they're much more rounded, much more professional looking. And the biggest difference I find is that the ends are also shiny. So if you imagine like a pearlized nail polish with a little bit of a pearl look, that's what the ends of these look like. And I personally don't like the fact that they look pearlized. I like the look of the matte stamens. So all the ones that I made myself, these ones, and the homemade ones that I didn't make, they look matte, and I prefer that. We'll make some of these in a second, but first, I wanted to talk about ways of modifying shop-bought stamens to suit your own purposes. So, once again, here's some I did earlier. These were the same stamens as these. Hopefully you can see that the ends of my modified ones are a kind of dusky, salmony pink color. And here are the white ones to begin with. Now, I was hoping that painting them would make them also look matte, but they've kept the pearlized texture, which is a shame, but never mind. So should we coat some of these in some more acrylic paint just so that you can see how that happens? So first I need to get my acrylic paint. What are we painting with? We're painting with acrylic paint. I have a set here from a cheap supermarket. Any acrylic paint does fine. And if I remember, the way I mixed the pink was I used a red, a white, and a bit of blue. But I might also mix some black into these just to make them a bit darker. Because when I put together the middle of roses, I really like this look of the ones that came from someone else, where they've got a light, a dark, and a mid-tone. And I didn't do that on these brown ones. And that's actually a shame. I think it would have looked nicer to have different tones in them. So I'm going to try and make these shop-bought ones into these different tones. And as I already have what I would call a medium pink, and I'll keep some of the ends of these white, I will paint these other ends into a darker pink color. So I need a pot for mixing in. I'll do it in this painting glass jar. And then I will need a paintbrush for painting them. And I'm going to use the big paintbrush just because it's easier for these. And then I will also need something to dry them on once I've painted. And I've found that balancing them on the edge of a masking tape rim for some reason works extremely well. So let's start mixing up some paints. In fact, actually, it would be easier if I mixed on a flat surface rather than in a jar. What was I thinking? This is just a sheet of baking paper. Let's see if this works. Zoom back out a little bit. There we go. Right, start with some red. This is just basic color theory, just about mixing paint colors. You can, of course, go and buy ready mixed acrylic paints if you want to. It doesn't matter. You do whatever you want, but I figured since I have these, I'll use them. And when these use up, I'll probably go and buy a better set, because actually, can you see how bright this red is? It's almost the same color as my nail polish, and my nail polish is actually orange. But what you really want is to think of printer colors, CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which is black. This is a bit too orange for color mixing, so it doesn't work too well, but it's what I have, so we're just going to use that. And to make it a slightly cooler toned pink, I'm adding in, oh, and that click must have been very loud on the microphone, I'm very sorry. I'm just going to add in the tiniest bit of blue. Hopefully that's okay. Let's mix it up and see what we've got. Sound like a darker, oh yeah, that's not too bad actually. Perfect. Yep, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to, now you can do this one by one. I am a little bit lazy, so I'm just going to see what happens if I align all of these stamens in my hand and then just dip them in there and just paint over the top. Ta-da! Nice and quick. So this is much quicker than making your own stamens. You can just customize shop-bought stamens and just color them. And notice how I don't care if I'm getting paint some of the way up on the string there. I really like how that looks. I think it makes them look a little more like purposeful. So that's what I've done. You could of course then go and paint all the bits of string. That's fine as well, but you don't have to. You can if you want to. You do whatever you want. It's your flower. As I say on the beginning of most of my YouTube videos, there is no right or wrong way. It's whatever works for you. There we go. I'm happy with that. And I could paint the other side, but I'm actually going to leave it as it is because when I combine these like this, I'm going to get my lights and my darks and then my midtones that I made earlier. To dry them out, I will separate them. So let's just place them very carefully on the masking tape. And actually that's also a bad idea because I'm going to need the masking tape. Okay, I'm going to lay them out on the baking paper. There we go. And just wash this paintbrush back into the jar of water that I have. And just some general health and safety when painting. Don't use food, things that you would use for food in the kitchen, like a drinking glass, to wash your paintbrushes in. Have a dedicated jar for paint things, because you don't want to be drinking contaminated water. And it's also a very good idea to have a different kind of jar to the glass that you'll be drinking water out of, because I have been known to dip paintbrushes into tea. Not a good idea. Obviously, don't drink your tea if you've accidentally dipped a paintbrush into it. Right, so that's the pink ones. So you can see that's dark, that's white, and then here's the mid-tone. I think that's going to look really lovely when put together. So that's if you've got shop-bought stamens, or even if you've made a whole bunch of your own stamens and you want to paint the ends, this is how you do it. And now, let's say we're going the extra mile and we want to make our own stamens. I do have a video of that, which I will link to once the stream goes, like after it's finished going live and when it's just up. But I thought I could demonstrate it real time, otherwise, you know, you don't know how long exactly it takes because the videos are all cut down to like 10-15 minutes, but actually it does take a long time. So to make the stamens, today I'm going to make some more, some stamens that are white, but you can do this in any color you want. So I've got some white string here, white thread. This thread is slightly thicker than normal sewing thread. Let me show you the difference. So this is just Gutermann polyester thread for sewing machines. Look at how thin that is. And then this is just some other cheap thread I picked up that's much thicker. I don't know what the name of the thicker thread would be, but you can just go by eye. And it doesn't really matter which you use, it's up to you, but sometimes you might want the stamens to be thinner looking and sometimes you want them to be thicker looking. So on these ones here, I use thin thread. It has all kind of stuck together, but we'll talk about that later. But this is just thin normal sewing machine thread. but this is the thicker thread that I'm going to use today. I think you can see it a bit better on camera, so that's why I've chosen this one. So to start with, I'm going to unwind some thread, and I've got a photo frame here. Well, I mean, this was part of an old box, but you can use a photo frame or a box, but you need some kind of frame that has a bit of width to it. And then I'm going to get some masking tape. Let's read chat while I'm trying to find the masking tape. Rachel says, possibly buttonhole twist or carpet thread. That's what I'd look for in the US. That's probably exactly what it's called. Yes. So, you could start by wrapping the thread around the top of the frame and tying up in a knot, but that takes too long, so I'm just going to pop it on the very edge of the frame and stick it down with some masking tape. Oh, this masking tape is very thick. There we go. So I've got that little bit of thread secure there by masking tape, and then I'm going to wind it around the frame. And I'm taking care to make sure that each strand is spaced out and not touching the strands next to it. You need that space in between them, because what we're going to do next is coat it in a mixture of PVA and paint. You see how much time this takes? Time and concentration. So much concentration required that I even stopped talking. Hi Angeles, good afternoon. Lovely to see you there in the chat. I really like how we've got some regulars watching the streams. It's really lovely to see you all coming back to watch, and hopefully we've got some new viewers as well. If you're new, make yourself known. Have you joined me on a live stream before? I mean, you don't have to make yourself known. Maybe you're just happy watching and not talking to us in chat. But if you do have questions at any point while I'm doing things, or if I've not explained something properly or you can't see something, let me know in the chat. I will try and reply. So as I'm pulling the thread around the frame, I am giving it a little bit of tension. Not too much, so I don't want to deform the frame or anything, but it's just enough tension to make sure that it's holding its shape. And I'm coming up here to where I've almost run out of frame. So I've got this piece of masking tape that I cut off a second ago, and I'm just going to secure the top with the masking tape. And I'm hoping that that's enough to hold everything in place. If it's not, I might want to use some more masking tape. Let's see. Oh no, that feels strong enough. Okay, lovely. So here's my frame covered in thread. Slightly thicker thread, I've already mentioned. Next, we need to coat it in something, and the reason you need to coat the thread is because the stamens are you're adding a bit of weight to the end of some string, and if you don't make that string a little bit more rigid, they'll just collapse inside the flower, and you don't want that. You want them to stand up nice and straight, and to do that you need to make the string rigid. Now, I've just literally had an idea where maybe you could just use one of the chemical millinery stiffeners that you would use for stiffening a felt hood or a straw hood or something, but that feels like a faff to just get a bit of chemical out, and you know, because when you get the chemicals out of the cupboard, you've got to have all the windows open and space ventilated and a mask on and gloves and whatever. But this is just a non-toxic way of stiffening the thread, which is using a mixture of PVA and acrylic paint. So I was going to make these stamens white, but then you guys won't see how it mixes. So do you know what? I feel like you can never have enough black stamens. I really love making poppies, and poppies always require black stamens. So let me just mix up some black acrylic paint and PVA glue. You want the mixture to be mainly PVA. So you want more PVA and just the tiniest amount of paint. And maybe I should have used black thread, but I guess you'll see it more this way around. And the reason I'm adding acrylic to... Oh, do you know what? Actually, black is a bad idea. No, I'm gonna have to stay... Yes, I'm going to have to do it white, I'm afraid, just because. But I am going to add a little bit of white acrylic to the PVA. You don't have to do that with the white, but if you're making a colored thread, like a black thread or a blue thread, pink thread, green, whatever color, you're going to want to try and add enough acrylic paint into the PVA glue to color it just enough. Because when the PVA dries, it does dry clear, but it will have a slight white cast to it if you're putting it onto a darker thread. Because I'm putting it onto a white thread, this isn't going to make much of a difference, but I'm going to just add a little tiny bit of acrylic paint just so that you guys can see the ratios. So it literally has to be enough, so enough to just give it a little bit of color, a little tint. So this is the white PVA, and this is the acrylic paint. Oh, plonk. Can you see? That's hardly anything there at all. That's the amount of PVA. That's the amount of acrylic, and that might actually be a bit too much acrylic, but never mind. Let's find a paintbrush. I'm going to get the biggest paintbrush I've got, even though it's slightly covered in pink water. Never mind. A slight pink cast never did anyone any harm. Clean the end up of that. Okay, this might be a bit too much paint even for the acrylic, for the PVA, but never mind. Let's mix it up. Oh, look at how white that looks. No, I'm going to add more PVA to this. This looks more like paint than PVA. There we go. You would not have been able to see the amount I just put in because it's white on white. I realise that. I apologise. It also doesn't help that acrylic paint has kind of the same consistency as PVA glue. Oh well. And it has gone slightly pink because I had a pink paintbrush, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. I'll just make some pink Stamens out of it. Right, so I've got a big glob on my paintbrush, and all I'm going to do is just paint up and down. Coat all of the threads. And here I've got a thread that's decided to link itself, so I'm just going to run the paintbrush between those threads and just make sure that they are loosened up. Of course, maybe another way you can do this is, you know when you're making a felt hat, and it's good practice to wax your thread for working with felt because of all the friction involved in stitching felts through felts. There's a lot of surface area there, so you need to wax your thread when working with felt. But I wonder if you waxed this thread and then coated it in acrylic, that could potentially work quite well in making a thick, rigid thread. Because when you wax the thread, it does make it have that shape a bit more. I guess you'd have to wax your thread first and then coat it, or you'd... Ooh. But then would acrylic paint and PVA slide off a waxed thread? Something to experiment with. I'm gonna have to give that a go. See if it works. Or maybe just multiple coats of wax would make a good set of stamens. So run it through the wax block 5 times, iron it, let it cool, run it through the wax block 5 times again, just build up those layers of wax. That could probably do very well. It's probably much quicker than doing it this way as well. But this is quite a traditional way of making your own stamens, I would say. Oh, okay, when I go across like that, you see all the... I don't know if you can see, actually. There we go. So if I run my paintbrush across like this, you can see all those thread lints start showing up. So you really need to go with the direction of the thread. Okay. Now, ideally, what would happen now is that I would leave this to dry, cover the mixture of acrylic and PVA with some cling film, or I would have made it in a jar that had a lid or something. And once this is dry, which will take about 2 hours or so to be fully dry, is coat it again, and then maybe coat it a third time, just to make sure that it's rigid enough. But as we are live, I don't have time to leave this to dry. Let me just pop this to one side, and ideally you want to leave this propped up on something to dry. Oh, trying to make sure it doesn't fall down. Nope, that's going to fall. Oh dear. Pop that there for now. Here's one I made earlier. Please focus. Hopefully that's focused. Right. Here's some thread that I coated in some PVA glue yesterday, and I coated it twice. It still doesn't look rigid enough, but I'm going to use it anyway. This was also a thicker type of thread. So this is why you can see it's got quite a lot of bits of thread sticking out of it. It's just very thick and not very good quality thread. This is a great way to use up good quality thread that you don't actually want to sew with because it breaks or it snaps or something. So that's a use for that. So the next thing to do is to cut it off and then cut it to size. So I'm obviously going to avoid the edges there. Oh, that is rather rigid. There it goes. And then does anybody have any questions for me so far, or is everything quite self-explanatory up to this point? Glue on my hand there. You see, look, I've cut these off. You can see how rigid they are. If I hold them up, they're only slightly going off to the side. That's really holding its shape rather well. Only a slight bend to it. Right, I shall cut them off the other side. Oh, something I forgot to mention about the frames that I'm using, or photo frames, or whatever you decide to use. I've coated this in sellotape, just because that means that it doesn't stick, things don't stick to it too easily, and I can quickly take things off. So now that I've taken off my main bits of thread, I want to peel off the leftovers so that I can reuse the frame again at a later date when I need to. If it peels off, there we go. It should come off. I'm just going to use, rather than using my nails, don't want to break a nail doing this. Nope, it's too thick. Let's try one of these. It's really stuck itself down there. That's a bit of thread that's unstiffened. It's not much chatting to be had today, just a lot of doing. Compared to our past streams where we've just all been chatting away and discussing ideas and ways to do things. This is a bit less engaging. Just watching me create a mess, really. Right, that's freed up this frame for next time, and I'm just going to pop all this rubbish into my little bin that I have to the side, and here I'm just going to cut off the ends. So now I just need to cut all these threads into a good length of stamen. Now, I always find that I prefer a shorter stamen length. I just think it looks nicer. So the key is to align all the ends also into a bunch, and then you can chop it to whatever size you want. Now hopefully my scissors will be able to cut through this massive bunch. Right, first off, here's my little bin. It's easier to cut over the bin. I'm going to even out the ends first. So cutting that bit off. Oh, my scissors managed that just fine. And then finding the shorter bits here. Oh, they're all very much different lengths on this end. Oh well. Let's I'm actually going to chop. Okay, no, we'll get to that end later. Let's decide on a length that we want. So this is the length of a shop stamen, and I'm measuring from below the knobbly bit. That's about here. Now I think that's too long. I know from experience that I don't like it that length. Let me just get a ruler out. Or a measuring tape even. Let's have a look. The shop one that I have, the shop bought one, is between the knobbly bits is 5.5 centimeters. So I guess maybe I should make mine 4.5. I'll make it 4.5. I don't want to make them too long and I don't want to make them too short. Yeah, I'll go for 4.5 centimeter lengths, which is where my thumb is. Not over the bin because I'm keeping these. There we go. Oh, maybe that is a bit short. Okay, yeah, that's a bit short. Okay, I'll keep those to one side. Maybe it's nice to have a mixture of various lengths. So we'll do that one and then let's go for over here. That's a bit longer. And then I can get a second length of these out of here. Now I'm kind of measuring it all by eye. It doesn't have to be exact because once they go in the flour, and then these are my leftover bits. Once they go into the flour, you won't really notice. But I will keep my shorter ones separate from my longer ones. And then we've got to figure out the mixture for the end. Quick tea break for my throat. I've been talking all this time. I'm drinking green sencha goji berry tea today. Right. Lovely. Time to make the stamen end mixture. I'm just going to clean out this the white will play havoc with it. Now you can make them any colour, so you could pair the black end with any other colour stamen tip. It doesn't matter at this stage. You only need to colour match the thread really to whatever mixture you're coating it in. So this is going to be just fine as is. Right, black stamens. So The Stamen mixture, I think this is rather clever. It's PVA glue, so it's that the craft glue type, so polyvinyl acetate, corn flour, and then acrylic paint. So, and you're aiming for consistency of toothpaste, or maybe just slightly runnier than toothpaste, because last time when I made this and I made it toothpaste consistency, it was a bit too thick. Maybe I just use a particularly thick toothpaste. I'm just going to pour in a little bit of glue. Always make more than you think you need, because you never know. You never really know how much you're going to need of things. If you want more robust quantities of this, more accurate quantities, if you have a look at the video that I made a while back about making handmade flowers with the Stamens, I think Matthew's linked that in the chat for me, thank you. I think I actually measured out specific quantities, but today I don't have time for that, so we're just going to see what happens if we just mix it up by eye. So that's my PVA. This is my corn flour. I think you can call it corn starch in America. This would potentially also work with rice starch or potato starch, any kind of starch really. I wouldn't use wheat flour though. That's not fine enough. You want a really fine starchy powder. And then I'm going to mix that with black acrylic paint. You could potentially also try and mix this up with some black dye, some black liquid dye. Maybe even food gel would work, food colouring gel. Oh! Almost sealed itself shut, this paint. Right, let's see. Oh. And I'm going to use a little stick to mix this up. Oh, I think that's way too much corn flour that I've added in. To dilute it down, I would add glue. I wouldn't add more paint. The paint's there just enough for colour. Well, that is a bit too much corn flour. Is this toothpaste? What do you guys think? Plonk. I'm just trying to think if that might be a bit too thick. Oh no, it's kind of, it's dropping off my spatula just fine. This has actually turned out okay. Right. Now, it's never going to be jet black when you use acrylic paint, because it's being kind of grayed out by the white starch powder and the white acrylic paint. The acrylic paint will dry clear, which is why it works on the thread really well, but the starch will always make it look slightly pastier, so you'll never get a full black. But maybe if you use dye or food colouring, it might work. Maybe that's something I could try next time. Before I continue, I'm going to make a stand for the Stamens to dry on. So, right. I've got some baking paper here. I think in my original video I said you can use printer A4, a page of just printer A4 paper. But I then discovered that actually things stick to paper and baking paper might be a better option, so I'm trying something new today. Hi, Shari. YouTube gave you a notification too late. That's strange. It shouldn't have done that. Oh, well, never mind. You haven't missed much. We've just been making some flower stamens for the center of a rose that I will be demonstrating. So to make a stand to dry the stamens, you're just aiming for a little kind of several folds in some paper, just big enough for the stamens to rest on, like this, and to dry. And actually, I'm just going to grab my tweezers because I think it'll be easier to pick some of these stamens up with tweezers Right, I'll make a second stand because that's definitely not going to be enough. So, making the Stamen stand. Folding a bit of paper inwards. And this is just baking paper, baking parchment. And then inwards again. And then inwards again. And inwards from the other side again. And it doesn't have to be super exact. It's just enough fold inwards to be able to balance the stamens on. Let's see, will this fit? Yeah, that'll do. You see, that's how you want it. So each end is dangling off the side. Right, I guess I'll start. And do you know what? I will just get a tray from under me, because if I do this in a tray, when it comes to clearing my table for the next step, it will be easier for me to transfer things. So, right, I'm going to want to use a toothpick for this bit. Let's see, is it easier to hold it with a... Yeah, okay. So I'm going to use the tooth. This is very time consuming, but I think you can get some really lovely results here. Oh, look at that. That has worked really well straight off. Maybe I should zoom in a bit for this. Should have used my macro lens here, really. Oh well. Hopefully you guys can all see that. So that's already one end created. Then I'll do the other end. And to make them thicker, if you wanted, you can just let them dry and then coat them in the same mixture several times. I think this can be rather therapeutic. If you've had a long, stressful work, just sitting and coating each stamen one by one. It's meditation. Millinery meditation. Oh, let me show you what's happened to the first one I did. I think I coated it too much. Let's see. Can you see how it's kind of turned into some globules? They're very lopsided. Very, very lopsided. So I've put on too much corn flour mixture onto there, and gravity has done its job. And now I've... Oh dear, these tweezers aren't doing a very good job of holding things. Oh well. Let's try my other tweezers. These come to a better point. There we go. That's better. Right, coating again. Now, I have seen some people in the flower making world be able to just dip a whole bunch in and not have to do it one by one with a toothpick. But when I tried that in the past, they all just stuck together and it was such a mess trying to unstick them that I thought it wasn't really worth my time trying to figure that out. So I'd just rather sit here one by one. And if you didn't want to sit here one by one, you can just go and buy shop-bought stamens. But sometimes it's nice to just make all your own trims from scratch. Millinery can be so custom made to the extent that it's nice to know that you can do all the steps in the process yourself. You don't have to know. No one says that that's a requirement for millinery, but sometimes it's just nice to be able to offer that as a service. It gives you the opportunity to offer different price points for your hats. Or if you're not a member of the millinery industry, the millinery trade, and you're just sitting at home making hats for yourself, you know, why not make everything from scratch if you've got the time? If this is a nice hobby. So I'm going for a slightly different style of stamen here. You see how that's kind of elongated forwards. This is where you're starting to shape your stamens. These are some other stamens that someone else has made, and you see that's the shape I'm going for because I think it looks really lovely. But then here are my seed-looking stamens that look a little bit more organic. And then here are some of the pink shop-bought stamens that definitely don't look organic in the slightest. But, you know, different looks. It's good to know how to achieve the various varieties. That's not a good, that's not good phrases. To achieve various different looks of stamen shapes. Because you never know what you're going to need for specific flowers. And actually that's what this custom process will give you the opportunity to do, is sometimes, I mean, not only the stamen ends, but the stamen thickness. So sometimes you might want a stamen that's on a thicker thread that's a little more wobbly, or you might want something super rigid, in which case you might even consider just using wire to make stamens if you really needed to shape it like when making lilies or something. Let's see if dunking a whole bunch will work, because these are a lot more rigid than I usually make. If I make sure that they're all spaced out. Let's see. I kind of spaced them out like a fan. Let's see if I dip them all in. Oh, do you know what? That's not too bad actually. Okay, so when they're rigid and shaped out like a fan, that's quite possible to do. Except now I've overdone it and some of them have stuck to each other, so I'm just going to use the tweezers to separate them out. I'm going to put these on the other drying stand, or not. Alright, one by one. I've got no consistency today, look at that. They're all, whoopsie! They're all different shapes. But that doesn't matter. These do take a surprisingly long time to dry. A very surprisingly long time. And when they do dry, you'll be surprised at how rigid the ends have managed to dry. Oh dear. I think I may have got some on my tweezers. Yes, I do. That's what's making it all sticky. See, it's top heavy. It doesn't want to stick. There we go. Oops. Oh dear. Okay, if I sit here and try and finish off this whole stack, we will be here for at least another 2 hours and I'll never actually get around to showing you the rows with the flower tools, which really is the point of this whole stream, so... Oh, Rachel's written something in the chat. In the US, there's a floral or bridal product called tie wire, which is very narrow gauge wire wrapped in thread like millinery wire. The store-bought stamens I've found have their stems out of that. Oh, interesting. I've not seen stamens on wires here in the UK, but I think everything we have in the UK is these days just shipped in from Chinese warehouses. So you can buy the shop-bought stamens very cheaply. But they do have a very plasticky quality to them. Oh, that tea is so glorious. Right, shall I stop with the stamens? Because otherwise we'll be here for hours. What I'm going to do is wipe this mixture off so that I can salvage the mixing stick. There's no point in throwing that away, I can reuse that again. Same with the toothpick. And reuse the toothpick again. I will have to go and wash my hands before the next step because I'm now covered in glue and paint. You see, you'd think millinery is very glamorous, but a lot of the time you're covered in bits of paint, bits of dye, bits of glue. Right. I think you've seen enough of the stamens. Hopefully you've all understood the what we're doing here with them. I'll finish these off later today so that I don't let the mixture go to waste. But that's essentially it for stamens. And the next step is to put them all together. Right. Might as well keep all of that on the tray. Right. I will just pop this on the floor for now, and hopefully my kitten is asleep somewhere so she doesn't come barging in and put her feet in all the paint. That would be a nightmare to clean up. Right, so the next step, oh, I should probably wash my hands for this. Let's take a quick hand washing intermission. Hello everyone, I've washed my hands, all clean, look at that. Right, next step. Now I had my list of things to do. Let's tick off what we've done so far. Make cotton rosebud, yes, we've done that. Colour the modern stamens in light pink, yes. Wrap white thread on a frame and paint it in PVA, yes. Cut black thread off a frame, yes. Make the baking paper stand, yes. Coat ends in PVA, acrylic and cornflower in black, yes. Make the center of the flower. That's what we've got to do next. So, what do I mean by the center of the flower? Let's have a look at this flower anatomy again. The center of the flower is all these stamens bunched up. So of course they've come in this kind of way where they are all separate, and you've got to make them somehow stand up in the center of the flower. So we're aiming for this. Now, these ones I've done on the 0.4mm wire, and I have discovered that actually this is a bit too flimsy to hold this amount of rose. This rose is rather large, although I'd call it a medium rose. This is a medium rose, but it's a bit too big to be stable on the 0.4mm wire. So I'm going to actually use the millinery wire that is 1mm, which is also a bit, that's a bit too thick, but here it is. It's what I have. Ideally, maybe a 0.7, 0.8mm wire would be better for this, but oh well, this is what I have in the cupboard. So that's what I'm going to be using. Let's see if our stamens from earlier are dry. So these were the pink ones that we coated, or the shop bought ones that we coated. Oh, I think they might be dry enough to use actually. That's lucky. So, for this, I just need some pliers and some thread. Now the thread should really match the colour of the string. In this case, that's white. So I'm just going to use the standard Gutermann sewing thread there. Okay. The problem with this millinery wire is that it's very thick, and you can see if I press on one end, the other end will shoot up. So it does need a little bit of straightening if you want the rose to sit well. As with millinery wire, whenever putting it into a hat, you do need to take the time to straighten it. Oh, that was surprisingly fast. I straightened it in almost one move. But to straighten it, I just bend. I put it on the table and then I see where it's wonky, and then I press down on that bit or up on that bit to straighten it out. But it's pretty much straight. It's still in a C curve, but I don't have the time to fully straighten it out here live. Otherwise, again, we'll never get to the rose. So I'm just going to fold it in half. There we go. In fact, if I just kind of slightly rotate it a little bit, I rotate that bend. No, that's not going to work. Try and bend it all into the same direction. You see, this is what you want to avoid. This is bad. That's very bad. That's going to poke someone in the eye. Okay, let's try that again. I'm just going to try and fold it inwards together. Nope, that's also going to poke someone in the eye potentially. Oh, that's less likely to poke someone in the eye. Let's go with that. I will, of course, bind the ends together later anyway, but it is good practice to have completely straight ends without a curve in them. So if you have the time, I really do suggest that you do that. Okay. No, do you know what the perfectionist in me is saying? Do you know what? No, straighten it out, because this is rather dangerous to have the wire poke up like that. So that needs to bend this way. How are we doing there? Almost there. This is just practice. But the more you work with wire, there's nothing really to explain here other than just give it a go yourself, and you'll start noticing what directions to twist the wire into to stop it from poking out. I'm not too worried about the curve here. As long as they're both curving in the same direction, which they are now, just about, that'll do. Right, with the stamens, I'm going to want the polyvinyl acetate glue again. So that's PVA craft glue, school glue, wood glue. It's got so many names, but it's not the same as polyvinyl alcohol. And we will get into that later today, because I keep going on about it and you're all probably thinking, why on earth? What is the difference? They're all PVA. Well, we'll get into that. So the stamens, once again, you can follow the Fibonacci numbers for the numbers of what you want, but sometimes that's maybe a bit too, because you get a lot of odd numbers, and obviously the stamens come, whoops, you can't see that. The stamens come in pairs, so you're going to need an even number. So I normally group them in groups of 5. So go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those ones, and then group them together, and I will have a look if I think that's visually it looks like it's enough for the center of the rose. It'll be different depending on the size of your stamens. That's the thing. That's why I hesitate to give you a number. There we go. So let's visually compare to one I made earlier. That actually looks about right. Maybe it could do with just a few more. A few more, maybe? No, okay. No, I'll leave it at this. Let's put it in the center of a ready-made rose and just see. Oh. You've kind of got to decide this now, which is annoying. It's very difficult to add to them later. So now is the time to decide. No, I think I want it fuller. I want more in there. Let's see, what colour should we add? Oh, I folded them now and they've all gone messy. It's got an awful lot of the middle ones, so I think maybe I'll just add in a few plain white ones. I think that will look really nice actually. Just a few more plain white ones. So I've just got to dive into my cupboard next to me and get them out because I didn't prep those. 1 second, everybody. Here they are. Actually, well, you can see how they come when you order them from a factory. That's just... you get a ridiculous number. And I did not mean to grab them all out like that, but let's see. 1, 2, 3. Is that enough? I mean, I would prefer to have kept it in groups of 5, but I have a feeling this now looks... Well, let me add another one in and see. Oh no, that's too many now. Okay. There we go. So here I've got 5, 5, and 3. And obviously that doubles because you fold them over. Try and keep the workspace tidy as I go along. Right, here they are. So, now, I'm going to have everything at hand. Actually, before I start, this is where a third hand would come in very handy, but I'm just going to cut off a length of thread and have it right next to me. And in fact, fold it in half. So it's just ready to grab and secure the stamens in. So, holding the stamens in one hand, in the same hand as the wire, I'm going to dip a paintbrush. You can't quite see this, but I haven't bothered pouring this out. I just dip the paintbrush and hope that I reach the correct level inside the PVA container. Pop a dollop of glue on the end there, like that. Can you see that's completely plugged the gap? And then insert the stamens into the middle of the 2 wires. And you don't want to take the stamens up to the very top, because it's the wire that's going to give them that rigidity. And once again, you are going to get your fingers covered in glue. This is not the most glamorous thing to be doing. There we go. And they do look a little more organic when they're all a little bit all over the place and sticking out. Right, there we go. I'm happy with them there. Just going to use my pliers to close up the wire a bit more. Whoops. Hopefully I didn't cut anything there. And then getting my bit of thread, which is folded in half. You can do this with it threaded with a needle, but obviously this time I didn't bother, but you could. Just find a way of getting the thread on there, whatever way you can. Oh, I've made a mess of this. Yep. Okay, well, the thread is kind of on there. I need to try and keep all the stamens together. So, oh dear, this has all gone a little bit messy. And then start winding that thread around all the stamens there. And some will start sticking out in weird directions, it doesn't matter. Remember, this is all going to be inside your rose anyway. Make sure that's nicely bound with all the threads. And ideally I would tie off a knot on the end, but I think I've just about run out of thread, so I'm just going to do a very quick knot and then just rely on a bit more glue. I don't like relying on glue, because I always feel like, you know, anything could happen to glue and it will fall out, but a knot will just always stay in place. Right, there we go. There is a single knot in there. Then I'm going to cut the thread off. No, those scissors won't cut. These scissors will cut. There we go. Right, and then maybe just a little bit more glue, just for some added security. Where did my paintbrush go? Here it is. There we go. Hopefully you all saw that on camera. I'm going to put this paintbrush straight into that jar of water that I had prepared earlier. Close my PVA so that it doesn't dry out. And here are the central stamens. What do you guys think? Does that make sense? Does everything make sense? I hope it makes sense. So these are the ones I made earlier. And then these are the other ones I made earlier. So you can see there's 3 different looks here. There's the shop bought with painted acrylic on it, and then 2 different styles of homemade ones. And something else to mention here. Can you see how these ones here, they're kind of all bunched together and fanning out? That's because when I put them together, I decided that I wanted to get them to do that. But instead of using thread and wrapping it all the way up, I used some paint to just hold them together. And the acrylic paint dried, so it holds that shape without having the thread visible at the top. So there we go. That's the center of the rose. So we've got our rosebud, which is drying above me. And in fact, actually, I will just bend the ends of this wire and hang that above me to dry for later. Because I won't be making a pink rose today. I'm actually going to be making a blue one. So I've got those blue stamens next to me. Let's double check my list of things to do. And I am 20 minutes over the time I would like to have been, but never mind. So, make into central flower. That's what we've just done. Stiffen silk Duion. So, this is where we get into the actual rose making. But I will take a small break in a second, but we'll stiffen the Duion first because I've got all my glues and paints out here in front of me. So I'll just grab my silk Duion. And I've got it here prepared in between some sheets of baking paper. And in fact, I'll just pop it over the top of the baking paper. And I'm just going to make sure my hands are generally clean because this is white Duion. Don't want to stain it with anything. So here is the silk Duion. And I will be stiffening it with PVA and water. Now, I did already mention that I will be using polyvinyl alcohol to stiffen the fabric, but so far I've been using exclusively polyvinyl acetate. They are both PVA, so essentially like a polymer plasticizing glue thing. They have slightly different properties. I still need to try and do some more investigation on exactly what the difference is, but essentially in one the A is for acetate, in the other one the A is for alcohol. And the polyvinyl alcohol is just a little more flexible. So even when it's watered down, which it is with here, it's 1 part PVA, 2 parts water. It's just got a bit more flexibility in it than using polyvinyl acetate. There's no reason why you couldn't use polyvinyl acetate if that's all you had access to, because polyvinyl alcohol can be a bit daunting to find. It's difficult to find and it's daunting to use because it comes in a powder and you have to mix it up yourself on the stove. And really I should do a video explaining on how to do that, but last year, in fact maybe 2 years ago now, yes, 2 years ago now, I made up what I thought was a small batch of polyvinyl acetate from powder on the stovetop, and I've still got it in a jar and I'm still using it. So until I use that up, I don't really want to make any more. So maybe one day there will be a video on making polyvinyl alcohol from the powder to usable form, but not yet. So let's just stiffen the fabric. I've got a wide normal paintbrush here. Just give that a nice shake inside my jar. And then I'm just going to paint it on, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm following the grain lines just so that it doesn't distort the fabric too much. If you wanted to stiffen a whole, like a meter of silk Duion, you can do that by dunking it in a container and then wringing it out, but then you get a lot of wrinkles that way. And I don't make that many flowers. When I make flowers, I just kind of make them 1 or 2 at a time. So I don't tend to need to have a lot of pre-stiffened fabric, so I just stiffen as I go. But if you were in a situation where you needed to make like 100 flowers, then I would probably go about stiffening an entire sheet of it. So this is a relatively simple process. And this is just a white silk Duion. And you need the fabric to be stiffened for the flowers because they need to hold their shape somehow. If you just used unstiffened fabric, many fabrics won't work for this, unless the fabric itself has body to it. So something like cotton organdy already is kind of, the process of making the cotton organdy makes it stiff and paper-like, so you don't need to stiffen it. Or something like silk organza, you don't really need to stiffen either because it is in itself quite a tightly woven fabric with a tight weave, so that holds its shape as well quite well. But a silk Duion, you can get them that are a bit more rigid, but they do just need just a little bit of help, just a little bit, not too rigid. So this is the stiffened silk Duion. I'm going to leave that to dry now, and I will take a quick 2-minute break to put away all the messy paints and get out the flower tools, and we can jump straight into forming all the petals, and we'll talk a bit about what kind of fabrics to use, maybe what not to use, although I don't know, I think you can use anything you want. So we'll talk about that in 2 minutes time. Hello everybody, welcome back. Oh, I feel like I went very fast through that first section. Is everyone keeping up okay? Oh, I went so fast I've dried my throat out completely. Shall we carry on? So essentially we're back where we started last week, where we started shaping flowers. And this is what we did last time. We shaped this one flower. And this time I thought, well, we'll just shape the rest of the things. In fact, let's start by talking about the types of fabric that I want to use in this next rose, because I'm not going to make it exactly identical to this one. I want to try and make it a different colour. I want to make one for my mum, and orange isn't going to suit her very well. She needs something a bit more cool toned, a bit softer. So I thought I'd make it for her in a light blue. So I've got various options that I've prepared already. You see, this is the stiffened Duion. It's like paper. So there's the stiffened silk Duion. Then I've got, I've already got some things that I cut out and prepared. So there's some more silk Duion and some silk organza in black and white. So we'll have a look at those in a second. And then I also want to see if I can make this out of cotton. I've never tried making a flower out of cotton before. I have no idea if the leaves will shape, but I guess we will give that a go. Yeah, in fact, now that I think about it, maybe what I should have done is prepared some more of this cotton to back the back of the velvet in. Let me show you the velvet I'll be using. It's this kind of velvet. It's not black. This particular shade of velvet from the company I order it from is called it's called Thunder Grey, which I think is a perfect description of it. I will just get out those bits of fabric wherever they've ended up in my little box of pre-prepared items. You see, I tried to prepare this time round for the stream. We're not winging it this time. So here are the bits of velvet, and I've also cut out bits of this stuff is called Bonder Web. It's like it's a kind of webbed glue that will melt when heat is applied to it. And you need to back the velvet in something, because can you see how drapey this velvet is? It just completely falls apart. It's not stiff at all. If I dangle it in front of the microphone, you won't hear it. Whereas if I dangle the Duion in front of the microphone, you'll definitely hear that. Hopefully that wasn't too painful on your ears. Maybe that was a bad idea. But anyway, that's just to demonstrate that this velvet is floppy, and for flowers, you do need it to be stiff. So, in fact, I might as well just get the iron out and... Actually, no, I'm not going to stiffen this just yet, because I don't know tonally which way the flower should go. I don't know whether to lean it more dark with a few more blacks and greys, or whether to lean it more white with white organzas and white Duions. So maybe I'll cut out some petals first, and then I'll decide on how to back it, because then I could always back it in the blue as well. You know, there's so many options when trying to come up with your own ways of making flowers that there's too many options is what there is. So I've already got a white Duion. I've got two white Duions, and I've got some silk there. Let's draw on some shapes onto the black and the blue. I'm going to start with the blue, actually, because I definitely feel like I want to include the blue. The black I'm less certain about. So I need an L and an M. And if you guys remember from last week, I paused kind of and let you take a screenshot of this pattern. So you can do that again. Take a screenshot, use the pattern. I don't mind. It's just a flower pattern. What I've got drawn on here is the straight grain line, but you're going to want to position it on the bias, which I've drawn on this L. That just stops the leaves from fraying too much. So I will try and slide that on this way. Now you can pin it down, But last week, we discovered the existence of this. Whoops. A friction pen, or friction. I feel like I should say it friction because that's how they write it, but I want to say it friction because that makes more sense. Because it's the friction, the heat from a friction application that makes the lines disappear. So I'm going to try and use it on the cotton. Yep, that works. To just trace around the pattern. I've found that this is actually, since discovering the friction pen, much quicker than trying to pin to the fabric and cut out while the pattern is pinned to the fabric. Sometimes I used to use soap as well, back in the old days, from a week ago, before I discovered the friction pen. Although the black friction pen won't work on the dark Duion, so that's not going to work there. I'll have to go back to the soap for that. You can use tailor's chalk, or you can get those handy dressmaking pencils that are like white or blue, I think, and you could use those, but I can never get those to work, so I'm not using them. Try and get the same orientation on this one and cut it out over here. Take it a bit closer, try and use up less of that fabric. So this is a size M, and this was the size L leaf. I feel like we haven't really chatted much today, everybody, because maybe I overplanned too much to try and get into the space of 2 hours. I was a bit too ambitious, so I haven't really taken the time to just calm down and chat to everybody. How is everybody doing? What's everybody drinking? Where's everyone listening from? How's life? Maybe I started the stream too caffeinated, too excited. Didn't take the time to ask you guys how you're all doing. So, while I'm cutting out, let me know. How are you? What are you drinking? Where are you from? Where are you watching from? I'm going to be cutting it out with tiny scissors. You can use large fabric cutting scissors, but they can be a bit unwieldy, so I'm just using the small ones. Sherry says, I have my standard coffee. What tea is it today for me? For me today, it's sencha and goji berry green tea. Last week I was trying to drink, grapefruit juice and not be caffeinated. And then I felt like I wasn't caffeinated enough. And now I had a third coffee today and then a whole pot of green caffeinated tea. And now maybe I'm a bit too caffeinated. Someone's tuning in from London there. This is the part of the stream where we go all Eurovision. It's Eurovision season soon. I don't know if the Americans know what I'm talking about, but if you're in Europe, Eurovision's coming up. That's super exciting. Last year I did a review of the headwear in Eurovision. Eurovision is my favourite show. Really looking forward to that this year. I will be ranking the headwear again. So watch out for that when it comes. If you don't know what Eurovision is, Americans, it's like, I think it's like Pop Idol, but for European countries. So every country has a different way of sending in a music act, but they shouldn't be professionals. They're kind of new up and coming, or they've won a game show or something. They've got some kind of new, untapped musical talent. And the best thing about Eurovision is that it is crazy. The staging and the songs are absolutely outrageous and fantastic and fabulous, and I absolutely love it. And the best is when they have fire on stage. You know, those flames that fire up from the stage displays. Oops. To try and concentrate a bit here. Oh, loads of things in the chat. Shari says that my goji berry tea sounds absolutely delicious. It really is. If you do find some, you're going to want to not burn it by brewing it at 100 degrees. So if you do find some sencha goji berry, brew it at 80 degrees Celsius in the kettle, as that gives it a very delicate flavor. So highly recommend that. Angeles from Madrid. Yes, hello. Oh, I cannot wait to be able to travel again. I know that we can technically travel now, but I'm just still a bit nervous, so I'm staying put in London. But as soon as I don't feel nervous anymore, I'm gonna go back to dancing all over Europe. I really miss that. Julia says, bonsoir de France. Helen says, I love being in as the wind blows and drinking tea and watching my neighbours clean up the fallen tree. Oh dear, fallen trees, very dangerous. Yes, we've had Storm, let me get this right, Eustace. No, Storm Eunice. I keep calling it Storm Eustace, but it's Storm Eunice here. And that was yesterday. But today we've had Storm Francis? Frank? No. What is it? Husband, if you're listening in, what was the storm? I've forgotten again. I know I've asked you this about 10 times today, but if you write it in the chat, I'll read it out and I promise I'll remember it this time. It's stormy season here in the UK. We get this every year, but this year it's been particularly bad. In fact, there were several millinery businesses based in the Midlands that I think yesterday the shops were out of power, no internet connection, no light. I hope they're all okay now. I didn't follow up and check. I will look them up later and just check in with them. I'm relatively lucky here in London. Nothing major happened too near where I live. Oh, Storm Franklin. Do they name them, I know they name them in alphabetical order, but are they named, like, alternating between male and female names? I think they are. That's what it sounds like. I was trying to reach for a female name named, a female's F starting name. That's why I thought it was Frank or something. Or Francis even. We have some odd naming conventions in the UK. Really concentrating here, guys, with the cutting out, because I feel like the silk is actually a lot more forgiving than the cotton. The cotton requires a little bit more precision with the scissors. There we go. Right, get rid of the offcuts. There we go. Oh, so I've missed some more messages. Sandra says, I'm drinking some juice and eating chocolate. I can't drink coffee in the evening. I wouldn't be able to sleep well. Yes, exactly. I'm going to have fun this evening because I had my third coffee, I think it was at 4 p.m. So, yes, at 3 p.m. we went to do a quick food shop and grabbed a coffee on the way back because we've got this lovely coffee shop next to our supermarket. But, oops. Oopsie, camera died. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll just switch over the battery on the top. How long was that out for before I noticed? Let's see. There we go, we're back. Is that gonna focus? There we go. Right. So, I've now cut out my blues. Maybe we can start playing around with some flower combination now. So, in the layered look, oh well, I haven't actually cut out the velvet, but we can hold the velvet in the shape. So here's my velvet, and the way I did the other flower was a bit of Duion. Well, in fact, I did 2 layers of Duion, then the velvet, then the organza. But in this case, I guess I could do Duion, then cotton, then the velvet. Let me just use a small bit, and then the organza. I feel like that velvet really stands out as being really dark, but once I tool it, it should look a bit lighter because tooling it will kind of crush the nap of the velvet and it will reflect the light in a slightly different way. Can you see how this leaf looks really dark if I do that, and then as soon as I direct it at the light, it looks really light. So this is what actually it will end up looking more like. But I can't decide. This is the decision that has to be made. What do we back the velvet in? Should I back it in black, or should I back it in white like I've done on the leaf? Or something I hadn't even thought of before is backing it in the blue, because that way I get more blue tones coming through. Maybe I should just back it in the blue rather than any of the other ones, because then I get a bit more blue running through the flower. And then I could actually layer it as blue cotton on the bottom, then the white Duion, then the velvet, which will be backed in blue, and then over the top some white. And that might balance out the darkness of the velvet a bit. What do you guys think? Have you got any bright ideas for me? Let me get the iron out. Oh, Matthew says I should do a poll. Okay, let's try the poll. This'll take me ages to figure out. Let's have a go at a YouTube poll. So, poll. Oh, I'm gonna have to stand up to reach the laptop. So, which fabric to back the velvet? Let's go blue cotton, black organza, white organza, or, I think YouTube only allows 4 options, white Duion. Okay, you guys ready? Let's see if this works. This is the first time I'm trying this. How exciting. How does the poll work? Where did it go? Or did that not send? Ah, there it is. So how do I... So, vote now. So, shall I go through... Oh, did everything pause again? Oh. Oh dear. Did I just mess that up completely? I did, didn't I? I messed that up. Shall I try that again? Oh dear. Okay, let's try that again, guys. I'm really sorry. Right, we're getting used to the technology here. So, backing fabric. Blue cotton. White organza. Black organza. Or white Duion. And I'll show you all those options in a second. Right, ask your community. I'm no longer touching the laptop. Hopefully that works. Did that work? Aha, there we go, it appeared. So here are the options. So this is the velvet, which you can see is a kind of, it's not quite grey, it's not quite black, it's somewhere kind of in the middle, slightly cold toned grey. So we can back it in the white organza, which this will be the underside, so it will be kind of sheer and look a bit grey. Or we can back it in the black organza, which will just kind of keep the same colour as it is underneath. Or we can back it in some white Duion, which will completely cover the underside and make it white. Or we can cover it in the same blue cotton, because I think I have some more of it left in the cupboard somewhere, and that would just mirror, just give the flower a bit more blueness. So what do you guys think? Let me know. So far, I don't know if you guys can see the results as soon as you vote, but so far everyone says blue cotton. Oh, and someone says white organza. Okay, I'm going to leave it up for a couple more seconds while I just take some more tea. And in fact, I should really get the iron out to prep the backing process once we decide what we're backing it with. So I'm going to end the poll now. Oh, no, people are still voting. Okay, no, while you're still voting, I will leave the poll up. I should carry on prepping. What am I missing? I feel like I'm missing these. Right, the iron isn't on yet. I shall carry on prepping the surface. Got my velvet. When I back the velvet, let me try and reposition this camera. And then move everything forwards a little bit. See, in my attempts at not making a mess on my table, I've made a mess on my table. Right. I can see there's been 8 votes so far, so if you haven't voted yet, this is your last minute warning to vote now. What I'm doing here is just prepping the velvet with the nap downwards. So this is the wrong side of the velvet pointing up, because this protects the nap as I put, as I'm going over it with an iron. And somewhere there should be way more Bondaweb pieces cut out somewhere. Oh, it's because I only need 1 extra leaf because I've got 2 that I've already made. Okay. So, right, I'm now going to close the poll. It's been active for about 4 to 5 minutes. So, end poll. Let's see the results. So, did everyone see that? Where did it go? It should pop up hopefully in a second. There it is. So, oh, no one said white Duion, which is a shame because that's how I've backed the leaves. Maybe I shouldn't have backed the leaves in the white. Maybe I should have backed the leaves in the blue cotton, but never mind, that's a bit too late now. An overwhelming majority for the blue cotton. So, we're all going for contrast today. I guess I'll turn on the iron and get my blue cotton out. It's a lovely blue cotton that I've got. It's from my grandma's fabric stash, so it's probably 1970s, 1980s made Soviet cotton. Husband, my front battery camera is about to die, so if you could come and deal with that, that would be lovely. Right, so I guess we'll go with blue cotton. I can't believe I didn't think of that earlier until coming live onto the stream, so thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful. Here's the blue cotton that I was talking about. In fact, this actually gives me a really good opportunity to show you the difference between a stiffened and unstiffened cotton. This is the cotton when it's unstiffened. You can see how it's lovely, foldy and drapey, and there wasn't enough here to make a dress or anything out of it, or even a top. There was just not enough, so I've been using it for hatting. In fact, I made a pillbox out of it, which is why I have some. Which is why I've kind of thought about making some blue flowers out of it. I don't think my mum will suit a pillbox, so I'm not making her a whole hat. I'm just going to make her a flower and potentially position it on maybe a little button or a little bandeau. I'm yet to decide that, but this is a very late birthday present to my mother. Rachel says, unrelated, your manicure is lovely. Well, thank you very much. This is a new nail polish that I treated myself to. It was supposed to be neon orange, and then it arrived and it wasn't neon orange, and I've already got an orange like this, so I'm slightly disappointed. But these two are two special effect nail polishes. These are iridescent flaky polishes. So they're little flakes of iridescent foil suspended in a clear nail polish. And this one goes from green to purple. And this one goes from red to yellow, slightly green sometimes. This is my favorite one. But I've used this one so much that I'm almost run out. So I wanted to use the other one that I haven't used too much on the other finger. There we go. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thanks for spotting. Right. Let's get on with the fabric. Let me pick a bit that's not going to be too mist on the fabric. Turning the iron on would be very useful. And then somewhere there was a bit of Duion. This is just for the velvet leaf. Just position that on top of there. Make sure that's on the bias. That's going to be the leaf. Oh, hopefully that's going to be fine. This is my leaf pattern. Oh, I realised that that's slightly not visible to you guys. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Oh, that iron. The iron heats up very fast, doesn't it? Right. This cotton doesn't have a front or back, so I'm just going to plonk it straight on. Just line up the grain lines and let's go for it. There's no going back now. Oh, maybe that's too warm on the iron on this cotton. Yep. Did that go all funny? Yes, it did. Never mind. Right, I'll just quickly do the Duion. Shari asks, is the backing Duion stiffened? No, it's not. That's all just floppy as usual. You can stiffen it if you wanted a really rigid leaf, but I find that if you're using Bondaweb in itself is really, really stiff. So I find that if you're using Bondaweb in between things, you don't really need to stiffen fabrics. Unless you really needed something. Oh, okay, I see a problem with this cotton. This cotton isn't pre-shrunk, so it's kind of shriveling up under the iron. But there's nothing I can do about that now. Other than maybe, wait, if I heat it up again, let's see if I can just peel it back up, because this has gone a bit bad for the velvet. All right, let's try that again. Yep, the iron's still on. Hopefully that will look a bit better. So the Duion does peel. I still feel like it's not quite working. I'm just going to pop some water on the iron to steam it. That also brings down the temperature of the iron a little bit. Let's see. Well, it's better than it was, but it's gone all a little bit funny, but that doesn't matter. Let's find my big scissors. There they are. Let's cut this out. This has not gone particularly well, but never mind. You can see all the grain lines have just kind of shifted there. Oh well. Oh well, I'll fiddle with that more in 1 second. Let's try and at least get the second one to work well. Right, let's try that again. I think the main issue that I had with that first one is I kind of moved the iron around in a circle, but really you should be going with the grain lines. Right, now I'm just going to cut this out and then I will apply a bit more pressure on it again. Oh, sorry, I'm cutting that off screen. If I'd prepped the blue fabric, I wouldn't have to be doing this in such a weird way, but never mind. Right, that iron is still on, so I'm trying very hard to not burn myself. Right, so get rid of this blue fabric. Right, now now that there's less fabric on the table, it's much easier to maneuver and press down. And some people would say that when you're working with velvet, you might want to use one of those velvet boards, you know, like the loopy side of the Velcro, no, not the loopy side, the hard side of the Velcro that sticks up. When you iron velvet, if you were making like a tailored suit or something, that's the kind of board you'd want to use to keep the nap of the velvet up. But I find that with flower making, actually crushing the nap, it starts reflecting the light in these kind of different ways, and I think that looks really nice. So I wouldn't bother with that for flower making, unless you were really precious over, you know, the tonality and the way it's reflecting light. So that's just something to think about when working with velvets. Oh dear, this first one has really gone. Oh, I think the wind has literally just picked up. I live in a new build flat, so everything's super insulated. But then when there's a big gust of wind, it kind of weasels its way in through the front door, and it makes a whistling noise, which is very off-putting actually. Right. Well, we've technically hit the 2-hour mark on the stream and we haven't even started using the flower tools. Maybe we should save this for next week, just to not rush too much. So, I mean, we've gotten quite a lot done. I'm not going to say goodbye yet. We'll cut the petal out and just double check that it all looks nice together. But I think that's bonded well enough now. Yeah, it has. So I'm going to pop the iron away. And pop the ironing board itself away. Let's have a look at all our components. So, I need to draw on the flowers and cut them out. I think it's turned out quite nice with the blue on the back. What do you guys think? Good choice. Good choice, everybody. Lovely. Where did those end up? I'm going to draw on the back with the friction pen again. Let's try to match up the grain lines, even though it's all gone all over the place. Get that in sectionally. Make sure it's definitely on. There it is. The worst thing about drawing sometimes on the backing fabric rather than the front fabric is you might just be a couple of millimeters out on one corner, and that's always such a shame when that happens. Right, hopefully it's cooled down enough to take on the friction pen lines. If I'd had some light blue velvet in my cupboard, I would have preferred to make my mum the flower out of light blue velvet rather than this dark velvet, but I just want to use what I have. Because if I order velvet, I have to order it online, and the minimum quantity is 1/2 meter anyway, and then it's really expensive postage. So I wanted to use what I had. And actually I think it'll be quite special using grandma's fabric. I think my mum will appreciate that. I need this on the bias, which is, oh dear. Let's put this one on the bias. And then pop this one over the top. And then do a swap. There we go. Double check the corners that I'm all in. Oh no, I'm not all in. Let's move it up a little bit more. I hope you guys can appreciate how scientific this process is. Oh, and that was the doorbell. That'll be cotton wool. Actually, that's great because I can show you guys what I meant this morning, earlier in the past 2 hours. What I meant about, you know, the folded kind of cotton wool. If you guys can hear rustling noises in the microphone, that is my wonderful husband opening the package up. So we'll have a look at the cotton wool from making the rosebud. If you weren't here at the beginning, we started the stream off by making a rosebud. And then we made stamens. So we've done a lot of things today. But my idea of doing a real-time rose in 2 hours, clearly 2 hours just isn't enough for all the things. Shari says, oh, I missed some chats. La Bricaloose, Rachel says, no worries, it's actually quite nice to see that everyone has to deal with unexpected results sometimes. I think that was in relation to the weird wrinkles on the velvet. In fact, you can kind of see them there, but Rachel says that it can add texture to the back of the petals. Yes, that's kind of my thinking. The velvet will kind of be the top part of the petals rather than the back, but I think it will still look lovely. And Shari says, sentimental value always adds a wonderful layer to any gift. It does. It's always really nice. And I think my mum watches the streams, so sorry mum, the surprise will be ruined, but that's okay. My mum really likes making different kind of bows and flowers and things as well. She doesn't use flower tools. She likes making like bows flowers out of ribbon. I think there's like a Japanese technique called kazanashi. Is that what it's called? When you kind of twist the ribbons and things and make petals out of them. My mum likes to do that, or at least she did when she had time. Now she doesn't have time anymore. But when I was younger, I think that's when my love of like putting things on my head and ribbons and flowers and bows started. Is my mum always used to take a lot of time to do my hair. And I really appreciated that. That's, I think, what gave me the love of all these accessories. Started with bows, went into flowers, and now I'm into hats. So full on progression of what can I put in my head today? Shari says Kanzashi. Yes, that's the one. Kanzashi. Sorry, I pronounced it in my Russian voice, Kazanachi. Which I think that's how the Russians say it, or maybe I'm misinterpreting that. But yes, it's that Kanzashi. Shari asks, could she ever come on as a guest and show us? I don't know. I'll ask her. I'll see if she's interested. She's normally really busy on the weekends because I have a younger sister who is 14 years old, and she does a lot of weekend clubs and activities that my mum takes her to. So my mum's normally busy on the weekends. But yeah, maybe I'll ask her. Right, that's one of them cut out. I think that was the M. That was the slightly smaller one. That looks really lovely backed in the blue. I wonder how that's going to deal with the flower tools, but I guess we'll find out next week. Let me cut out the second one. Oh, look at all this mess that the velvet has made. Look. If I wipe it up with my hand, look at all that. That's all the nap from the velvet falling off. Velvet's always very messy like that. I will definitely be wiping down the table after finishing the stream. Cutting out is my least favorite part. I think that's why I'm really silent, because I'm really trying to concentrate. I always remember at school, in primary school, so I don't know what the American term for that is, but preschool maybe? The young, up until you get to kind of 11 years old, so the really, really early stages when you're like 4, 5, 6 and 7 at school. And it's essentially like you're just going in to have fun for childcare reasons. And they sit you down at the crafts tables and get you to do colouring in and cutting out and gluing with Pritt sticks. Oh, I hated that. I hated all of that. Cutting out especially. Cutting and sticking. Oh, it's my least favourite thing to do. And then when I did my GCSEs at like, so that's the kind of first set of exams that you do at 15, 16 years old. When I was doing my art GCSE, I discovered double-sided sticky tape. And that was a complete game changer for me in the cutting and sticking world. But there's not really a replacement for scissors. Unless you get one of those die cut machines, which I did think about, because cutting out, last week I looked at the Lily of the Valley flower tool for you guys, the one that arrived in the post for me, that I ordered. And the one thing that's always put me off about making tiny flowers like Lily of the Valley or crocuses or orange blossoms, anything tiny, is just the amount of cutting out that you have to do. Like even this, I'm getting annoyed at this. But actually, since I bought this pair of scissors that I've had for about 6 months now, it's not been as bad as trying to cut out with other scissors. Oh, got one last line to cut out. And I'm not too worried about slightly cutting into the petals. So if I look at the pattern and look at these leaves here, so the pattern kind of ends here, but I have cut in just a little bit more. That doesn't really matter. As long as it's not more than 5 millimeters, it's okay to cut in between the petals. It can actually sometimes help shape them as well. That's another idea that you can do when making petals. Rachel says, get an intern to do it. I could, but I would want to pay them a fair wage. So I don't think I could afford an intern at the moment. Now, if I could teach my cat to use a pair of scissors, she doesn't have opposable thumbs though, so I don't think my cat could do it. And I can't afford an intern because I don't believe in free work. When I finished university, one of the first jobs I got offered was a free internship, and I turned it down because I said, look, I've had to pay for my degree, I'm not working for free. And in fact, Rachel, I think you did a video about fair wage practices on your channel. Maybe we can link that into the comments for people to see in case anyone in the chat is interested in getting interns or assistants or someone, because we should all be paying everybody a fair wage. Did you do a video on that, Rachel, or am I misremembering? Before we wrap up for today, one last thing. Actually, let me switch back to the camera view. I'm going to get the iron back out. Oh, and then we must talk about the cotton wool. I'm going to get the iron back out. Oh, that's a good system. Rachel says, here interns get college credit for the apprenticeship while they're still in school. That is a really good system. My university didn't have that. I studied graphic design. I didn't study fashion at university, so I wonder if it's slightly different for fashion departments. But my university didn't have any of that, and it was a nightmare. I think there's a big problem in the UK with free internships. Not sure about the fashion industry, but the design industry definitely. Oh, Rachel, you've got a video on how to price your labor for freelancing. That's still super useful for everyone. Maybe link it in the chat in case people want to go and watch that. That's a really important skill to learn. Back to what we're doing. I've just turned the iron on quickly because the pen does leave marks on the pattern pieces. You can see them more actually on here. There's a bit of black on the outline. The black on the outline here is the velvet, but there's a black outline here. So I'm going to use the iron to get rid of that. Magic. This pen, my goodness. This pen has blown my mind just as the double-sided sticky tape blew my mind when I was in GCSEs. Perfect. That's all going really well. I think we'll just have to put these aside and tool them next week because it will take me maybe another 2 hours to actually tool them. So, gosh, this has taken a lot longer than I thought it would. Might as well double check that my white patterns and all of these patterns. So this is the silk organza. Can you see how stiff that kind of is? Oh, it's stiff, but it flows really nicely in the air. There it is. Those black marks have disappeared. There's another one over here. And then I don't think I used pen on these black ones, but just in case, I'll just... Oh, it's sticking to me now. Right. So, I think that's everything that I needed to ironed. Oh, actually, I'm just going to double check that my leaf has bonded quite well. This is the leaf that Shari was asking about when you asked about the stiffness of the Duion. No, it's not stiffened. I'll just make sure I've definitely answered that because I can't remember if I did or not. Right, so that's all done. Now I'm definitely going to turn the iron off. One last bit of cutting out to do is this leaf, so I might as well do it now. Just while I've got everything out. And then we'll just do a recap of what we did today, because we've done a lot. Not as much as I was intending for us to get through, but, you know, I always do this. My husband knows that I do this. I always plan way too much. Yeah. But it's better to overplan than run out of material. Back when we used to teach dance classes, we'd always over-prepare. Like, we'd have... Like, in a lesson, you can generally get about, depending on what dance you're teaching, but you can generally get through about... If you're teaching, like, a routine, you can generally get through about 7 dance moves. But if you've got a class that picks it up really fast, you want to make sure you've got at least 10 to 12 prepared. So I guess you could say this is kind of what I've done here. And just pull that last bit off, if it pulls. Does it pull? Not quite. So Rachel's posted her video on how to price your work fairly. So I really highly recommend you watch that one if you're planning on ever selling things, because it's really important that you pay yourself a good wage and you don't overprice or underprice your items. I think it's really easy for us to underprice our work, so that's a really useful video. In fact, part of my exercise in making this flower was that I wanted to... Oopsie. As I was cutting my threads, my wire slightly pulled out. That's annoying. Let's see if I can stuff it back in. There we go, just about. I will have to go and get the iron back out to put that in. So my my wire pulled out as I was cutting that. I didn't spot that. That sometimes happens, and you just have to try and push it back in as far as it will go. It will never quite go as far as it started, and sometimes it will start poking out of the fabric, and you definitely don't want that. But while my iron's still warm, I'm just going to duck down behind my desk and press that flat. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Oh well, never mind. It's not going to be the best leaf. In fact, while I've got my PVA here, I'm going to dab a bit of PVA on the end just to make sure that it doesn't move anywhere. I don't want to get it on the side of the velvet. There we go, quick fix. Unexpected things going wrong yet again, as usual. I don't know why I'm so surprised that this happens when I go live. I know I make everything look really perfect in the videos, but this is what happens live. I'm just going to put a dollop of glue on there, and I'm going to try and get it not onto the velvet. Put a nice thick bit of glue on the back and kind of around the front, and that should hold everything together enough for a rose. I don't anticipate this being moved a lot when my mum wears it, although she's likely to wear it dancing. She's also a dancer. She likes to go and dance, so I might need to... Oh well, I got glue on the front there as well, but hopefully it doesn't matter. Hopefully it will be fine. Okay, I'm going to hang this up above my head, so bending the wire and just hanging it on the camera wire that's above my head that's out of shot like this. Right. Oops, no, that didn't hang well. Let's try that again. On this end. There we go, that's better. Right. Let me just tidy a few bits and pieces up. Should we do a quick recap of everything that we've done today? Even though I did put the stamens that we made out of reach, but I've got some other stamens around me. And let's cross a few things off my to-do list. And I'm sorry this hasn't been as engaging as usual because I've been trying to plow through things. Maybe that'll just teach me to go slower and not plan so much in. I always want to give you guys more, more content to see. So we stiffened the silk Duion and draw and cut out patterns in fabric. Oh, actually we got quite far. Velvet, Bondaweb and Organza. Yes. Okay, we got as far as the tooling. So I guess that next week we'll tool the flowers. I mean, you've already seen me do it to this one in last week's stream, but yeah, let's do that. Although I am really hoping that I'm going to get my act together and actually produce a proper video for next week, because that does need to happen. Anyway, let's go through what we did today following the list. So we made the cotton bud for the rose bud. So if we look at our reference flower, this was the reference flower, this was the bud, this was one that we made, and this was one that I'd made earlier, and they're two slightly different shapes, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. I mean, it's nice if you can get them to look identical every time, but sometimes it's not possible because, you know, that's the nature of handmade work, and it doesn't matter. We'll cover these in some fabric next week when we come to putting the rose together. So that was the flower, the bud, and let me show you that cotton wool that arrived in the post. So it's this, it's pleated cotton wool. That's the word I was looking for, pleated cotton wool. So you can see it's kind of held together. If I was to take this out of the tube, it unfurls into a long string. And that's really good for making these, because if you remember, we started off with a strip. That's the cotton wool I was using. Right, next we made we colored some stamens. So this is what we did. These are modern stamens that we covered in some acrylic paint that we mixed up. So these are the plain white ones, that's how they came in the factory. And then you've got the light pink ones and the dark pink ones. And I was just talking about how I like to mix the colors a bit, because I think it gives it just that extra dimension, because in this flower I forgot to do that and I think it looks kind of plain, but at the same time this is such an orange in your face flower that maybe it just needed the stamens to be a bit toned down, or at least let's pretend that's what I was thinking when I was making it and not that I just forgot. But going forwards I would prefer to make stamens like this, and so some of the other examples that I've also put out of reach somewhere. Oh no, they're over here. Here they are. So these are the blue stamens that I want to use inside this rose that I'm demonstrating. So you've got your light, mid and dark kind of slate blue colours. I think those are going to look really nice with the cotton. Then what did we do? Oh, we actually made the stamens, which I've managed to put in the other end of the living room, so I can't get those out to show you, but it was using the PVA glue, polyvinyl acetate, with some cornstarch and some acrylic paint to make the ends of the stamens, and the threads that we used we wrapped around the frame and coated that in PVA with a tiny bit of acrylic paint to give it a little bit of colour. So that was the stamens. Yeah. Oh, and we stiffened some silk Duion that we then cut out. So I'm sorry, I'm using the word we. I mean, I know I've been doing this, but I feel like I've been doing this with you guys. So maybe some of you have been following along, or maybe some of you will follow along in the future. So when I say we, I mean, you know, like you and me. I'm not trying to sound all fancy or anything. And then we cut out, and then I don't know, I'm getting tired now. Cut out the inside, the petals for the flowers, and they're in two sizes, in the medium and large, and there's a frame somewhere in the video where you can pause and copy the pattern. There's definitely a frame where you can pause and copy the patterns in the last video, or eventually I will digitize these, but when I digitize them they won't be free to use because obviously that takes me time to make. So if you want them free, go and grab them from the still frame. If you want a proper pattern in multiple sizes, you'll have to wait for that, and it will probably be about £1.50, £2 download. So yeah, because that takes me some time to digitize them. And then we did some cutting out. Oh, we did the pole. So thank you everyone for your input with the blue. I think that's a really lovely choice. So eventually, when I come to putting the flower together, we'll see how that looks on the back. And I'm really excited to see how that turns out because you never quite know until you put everything together. But there we go. Sherry says the millinery we, but not the royal one. Yes, the millinery we, us in the millinery world. Well, the time has come to wrap up, and I have a very special guest. Don't worry, all the irons are turned off. There she is. She's come to say hello. Or rather, she's come to say goodbye. So, thank you for joining, everybody. Once again, I've loved all your input. Oh, stretchy cat. I've loved all your input. Thank you for helping me out. Thank you for participating in my poll. We've got some really great ideas with the fabrics. Thank you for all your chatting. It's been great. I always love chatting to you guys. It's a lot of fun doing this live, so I get to speak to everybody. If you liked this video, please actually click the like button. And also, in case you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. This really helps me grow and reach a larger audience. I really love spreading the joys of millinery to the world, and hopefully the more people we can get interested in making hats, the more people will wear hats, and aren't hats just lovely? So let's encourage people to wear them by making them and sharing everything, because sharing is great. You can follow me on Instagram at @ByAlonaMillinery. So I tend to post some progress photos of hats that I'm working on for videos that are upcoming, or in my stories I post kind of more messy pictures about behind the scenes and things like that. You can also tip me if you enjoy my work and would like to financially support me for the video production side of things through Ko-fi, which I've left a link to in the description below. And also I have launched a Patreon, which I haven't officially announced because I want to make a video announcing it, but this is an unofficial announcement that there is a Patreon if you guys are interested in a bit more content and helping me out financially with my technology video production side of things. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a wonderful time. I've had a wonderful time. Next week, we'll tool the flower. We'll actually get the flower tools out and do all the making of it and put it together, and hopefully it will look lovely. So thank you all for sticking with me. See you next time. Bye.